Everything old is new again. America's entertainment pop culture talk show.
It may well possess a rudimentary intelligence.
I'm trying to think, but nothing happens.
Felt a great disturbance in the force.
Hello, I'm Mr. Red.
Come on, bark like a dog for me.
Where's the goodies?
Leave the gun. Take the cannoli.
I bet you wouldn't have done anything like this if Mom and Dad were here.
You filthy criminal.
Excuse me while I whip this out.
Go ahead. Make my day.
Here are your hosts, Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
Welcome to Everything Old is New Again. This is Douglas Viviani. That was the theme to Modern Family. I'm sitting here with the ever-domestic David Cohen.
Yes.
How are you, David?
Good. I'm very domestic today.
Why do you feel domestic? Explain that to me.
Well, because I feel like I'm at home, because we have a special guest with us here in the studio today, someone very near and dear to my heart.
We certainly do, and I'm going to introduce her in a few short seconds. First, I'm going to keep you
So much for the
spellbound.
build-up.
Yes, keep you spellbound to see that, listen, Modern Family is a show that's been on the air since since 2009.
I must have missed the first 50
You missed the
seasons.
first, exactly. But it reflects a difference in our pop culture and the way that families have been viewed. Of course, the family has changed in America, and television has reflected that. So I suggest this show includes a different look at the family, in some ways more realistic, I'd say, than one that I think we've seen in the past. But one thing remains the same, I think, is the support, guidance, and love of a family, yes or no?
Yes.
But I'm saying, all of these shows in the 50s till now, I think that's
Common
consistent,
thing. Absolutely.
even though characters have changed and the look has changed. So this week we take a look at the evolution of the family as represented by television since the 1950s to the present day. Of course, David loves that. We're going to go all the way back 60 years and take a look at history.
No, this is one time I'm okay with the history because it's cool and it's relevant, and yeah, go for it.
And it makes us subject to the fair use doctrine, so we could use all of these clips without having any issues because it's an educational program.
That's where the lawyer in you comes out.
I have to throw that out there at one point when Disney comes at us. We're on the record. We have the privilege
when Disney comes at us.
Yeah. When they find out how
threat.
popular the show is, and that they see that we're being successful on the tails of some of their antics, we want to make sure that we have our defense. Anyway, we have the privilege of Michelle DeFranco here, who is Michelle is David Cohen's wife. For how many years, Michelle? More years than she cares to
we
count.
got married in 1995, so that would make it 23 years.
And you dated quite a bit before then, correct?
Yes, we dated for 6 years before we got married.
So it's great to have a woman's perspective, not only on this particular topic, but in general and any time on Everything Old is New Again. So let's explore the social progression of the American family and women's changing representation in our popular culture. It should be like an applause there, I think. Yeah, that sounds... Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having me.
All the way from New York City just to visit us in East Northport, where we're broadcasting from.
It's a schlep.
And by the way, your voice is now in all over the country, from here to California, Iowa, everywhere in between.
Wow.
Like that?
Yeah, that's cool.
All right. So in order to do that, we've got to take a look at the family in the beginning, the first representations. And I have a show here that I don't know if anybody's really that familiar with, but I think it's a pretty good show. It's not too much on television anymore.
This is going back in history now.
All the way back. Now, this is back in 1953. We're going to listen to Danny Thomas. Remember Danny Thomas, Marla Thomas's dad?
You were 18 then, right?
Yeah. Again. So let's see what happens there very briefly.
Now, what would you children like for breakfast? Some crackly pops or oaty bits?
Oh, Mother, you needn't trouble yourself on our account. We'll have whatever you're having.
I don't want to hear any more of this highfalutin talk either.
My most humble apology.
There you go. We've got Danny Thomas with the spit take.
The spit take. You couldn't see it obviously, but yes, that was I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, Douglas.
Right, you are correct.
The origin, the first time we ever saw the spit take.
Yes, first time spit take was ever taken on television.
On television,
seen. He did it in his nightclub act.
Sure.
It was where you're taking a drink and something happens, you spit out.
Yeah, I know what a spit take.
Yeah. Well.
Thanks,
it's not. We're not just talking. I wasn't. Did I look at Michelle when I said that?
Yeah, you did.
It was implied.
The condescension begins.
You were mansplaining the spit take.
There we go. First of many times, I'm sure.
The woman's perspective is really nice to have. So the idea. Well, the idea is of course, now you can see that in the family, the dynamic there. Dad's the center of attention, talking about food. The kids were playing it off like they were aristocratic. That was the theme of that particular show, and that's why he went a little bonkers. But the question is, have you seen? Are you familiar with that show, either of you? Or
yeah, I think when I was a kid, it was on more in reruns. So I think I did. I have seen that show, or shows very much like it.
Yeah, it was a common theme.
Leave It
back
to
then.
Beaver.
Right.
And so you've got, common themes there. That mom is at home, mom's hanging out, not doing nothing. She's a homemaker, and she is busy as can be. But there's many of these shows, the dad, it was more male-centric, would you say, or no?
I mean, I think so. I think it just reflected the way things were more back then, which is like my mom was home.
Right. But mom wasn't wasn't less than half of the equation, or was she in real life at home? You know what I'm saying?
No, she was not.
But sometimes on the television shows, mom didn't have as many lines or as many, social points of contention or whatever it might be, the subject line of the show.
Well, I remember that show, Wait Till Your Father Gets Home.
Yes.
And the whole idea was like, that's where the buck stopped when Dad gets home.
Exactly. He takes the belt out and renders justice.
Yeah.
All right, let's take a look at Leave It to Beaver. We all know that show in some way or another, I think. And that's, again, from the 50s to the early 60s. Just a little feel of that.
Well, whenever we cook inside, Mom always says to cooking. But whenever we cook outside, you always do it. How come?
Well, it's sort of traditional, I guess. They say a woman's place is in the home, and I suppose as long as she's in the home, she might as well be in the kitchen.
Girls are kind of lucky, don't they, Mom?
Why do you say that?
Well, they don't have to be smart. They don't have to get jobs or anything. All they got to do is get married.
Well, Beaver, today girls can be doctors and lawyers, too, They're just as ambitious as boys are.
There we go. So you prepare to be offended by that, but then it turns around a little bit, right?
It's funny. I don't remember that as a kid, right? I don't remember June ever saying something like that.
I
It's
liked
interesting.
June was awesome. She put herself together. She did what she needed to do.
Barbara Billingsley. And she actually was able, this is the 50s, late 50s, the kids are asking about, Dad, why are you cooking? Well, that's a male, outside in the barbecue. That's what a man, does. And it got laughs, and that was
they were already poking fun at it.
Right. Which was pretty good.
The role
advanced.
reversal, right.
Yeah.
So I think that's why that show kind of paved the way a little bit. We're going to see shows that pave the way to some equality on the screen, I think,
But
at least we're getting there.
I love the utilitarian way that he looked at it. Well, I suppose if a woman's supposed to be at home, she might as well be in the kitchen, right? If we're putting her in the house somewhere, the kitchen's a good spot for her. Right. It was very,
I can think of another room, but yes, that's enough. I'm just kidding. But that is, for television, that is the place for a woman to be, yes. But you can even learn some lessons here and there from the Munsters. Is that possible? I don't know. Let's take a look.
Absolutely.
There he is, my son-in-law, the 150-year-old teenage punk.
I wish you wouldn't do this.
I just can't fight a chick. I gotta get out there and drag it with the gases. Otherwise, doll, I might blow by cool.
There you go. That's Herman Munster playing it off as a mod, if you will, back in the late. Well, it's early '60s, right? But he's playing it off of the old wild ones with Marlon Brando, right?
Right.
So he's playing it off. But there's Lily is in the picture, but male centered. Don't you think that show?
Definitely.
Or no?
Definitely. He was definitely the protagonist of the Munsters.
And Grandpa was number 2. Right?
Oh, Grandpa was number 2, definitely.
Yeah, but Lily did, she didn't give way. She was there. But I can't tell you one story that centered around just Lily. I remember the one time that Herman was out of work, and then Lily got a job as a welder, and there was flirting.
Common sitcom trope.
Right, because they wore the mask, couldn't tell. But so Lily was in there. That, to me, was the most that I remember a story surrounding her.
Were there any around Maryland? Being that she was sort of like the
I think
outlier?
about her. Yeah, there was
Might
one
have
where
been.
she had a serious date. And they brought him home, and they tried to get it.
But certainly not the focus of the show.
Definitely not. So let's get one quick one in here before we go. I want to remember something that when Mom finally got respect in the early '60s. My mother, the car.
Now, son, take it easy. You'll probably go through the roof when you hear this, but this is your mother talking. David, I've come back. What does it take to convince you it's me? Mom!
You sound like my mother.
There you go. a rather unsuccessful show. Jerry Van Dyke.
It was
just passed
unsuccessful,
away.
yeah, but you know, when you and I were growing up, I think the three of us, you always knew of that show. It was never on TV, but you always knew of this show called My Mother the Car, right?
Wasn't it bizarre? The mom's in essence, soul became a car.
The mother is a car?
Yes.
Right. I always said that's why I said tongue in cheek.
So it's not a metaphor. She was literally the car.
Yes, and solved his problems. He would drive around, and she would talk through the radio, and maybe the car would break down, and they would want to junk it, and so he'd have to go save it, and all this. Save her, really. So Mom finally got respect, you see, in the early 60s. We were breaking ground.
Sure. In what way is that breaking ground? That the mother was a car? Wait, no. I mean, I'm just trying to understand. I'm ready to believe that.
It's being facetious. I was just kind of joking with you.
Well, I mean, the car is the most important, like one of the most important things that in a family. It brings you where you need to go, as you said.
Exactly.
You know.
And so are commercials. We'll be right back. Right after this, and everything old is new again.
You're listening to Everything Old is New Again, America's entertainment pop culture talk show with Douglas Viviani and David Cohen.
How will you make it on your own? This world is awfully big. Girl, this time you're all alone. But it's time you started living. It's time you let someone else do some giving. Love is all around, no need to.
Welcome back to Everything Old is New Again. I could listen to that song for the next 3 hours, but I don't know.
Sonny Curtis wrote it in like a half an hour.
How about that?
Is that crazy?
That's insane. Sort of like how we prepare for the show. In 10 minutes, we've got it done.
And we also produce masterpieces.
Exactly.
Like
Speaking about masterpieces, Michelle DeFranco is here with us.
You almost said Michelle Cohen.
I did, because I want to say you are related to young David Cohen by being, of course, his partner in crime.
Yes.
And being that you're here, I'm very happy to be able to progress our discussion of pop culture with a woman's point of view. And in this particular case, we're now progressing a little bit into the 70s there. You know, it's a great tune, but did you hear, are you familiar with the words to what we just heard?
I, first of all, loved Mary Tyler Moore. I love that song. It takes me back to, like, my younger days watching it. And, yeah, I think Mary Tyler Moore was a great role model.
And if you listen to the words, and there was another opening as well, they did it next season, whatever, and it basically is, here's a woman out on her own, we're kind of surprised, good luck to you, we wish you all the best, but don't know how it's going to work out.
Right. You might just make it.
You might just make it after all.
Oh, and then it turned into you're gonna make
right,
it after all.
In later years.
Right.
That's a great pickup. But, you know, in looking back at our society, would that song be the subject of a sitcom today?
No, I don't think so. I think, like, we get it. You made it. You did it.
We get it, by the way, you can do it.
Yeah. Oh, shocker.
Like, but you're saying at the time,
people were offended that this show was showing this, like, single woman who just really didn't have any interest in getting married.
Right.
And they couldn't get over the fact that she was no longer with Dick Van Dyke, because they still saw Mary Tyler Moore as, you know,
Laura Petrie.
As Laura Petrie, right? Right. So the networks had a real trouble figuring out how to configure that in the viewers' minds, that this is a separate character now.
Now, I think in some ways their lack of faith in Mary Tyler Moore, a woman, to carry the show on her own, apparently, led to a great show in that, and she was very smart to allow this, if you will, or help develop this, all the women characters, and, of course, the male characters, but the woman was strong, around her to play off of.
Right.
So she wasn't, like, the only, you know, like, if you're the test person and you're the only one there, as opposed to, well, I've got a group of people with me to help me.
They made sure she was supported, right?
Right. So in an odd way, whether it was on purpose or not, because of society's doubt, I think, in her ability to carry this alone, they surrounded her with a great cast and created, I think, a classic show.
Oh, definitely. I mean, Rhoda was, and look at all the spinoffs. Rhoda was a spinoff. Phyllis was a spinoff.
Yep. Lou Grant, believe it or not, became a spinoff.
That's
right?
And
Lou Grant became a spinoff.
Right. But these great women characters that
Swan Niven, I mean, what a great character.
Oh, my God.
And here's a little piece of some of the best of.
The characters he created will be remembered by children and adults alike. Mr. Fee Fi Fo. And my particular favorite, Aunt Yoo-Hoo. Go ahead, laugh out loud. Don't you see, nothing would have made Chuckles happier. He lived to make people laugh. He hated to see people cry. So go ahead, my dear. Laugh for Chuckles.
And if you're a fan of that show, that's classic. If you haven't heard that before or seen that before, maybe want to pull up Mary Tyler Moore's, that episode is called, I think, The Funeral, Chuckles' Funeral, something like that.
A little song, a little dance, a little seltzer in your pants.
So that's memorable, and that's when she was way into the seasons, this has got to be 75, I would say, that episode. Was it memorable to you in any way?
Oh, my God, definitely. I mean, none of her stories had to do with cooking for men, pleasing men, or part of a family. You never saw her, you barely ever saw her. She was usually just in the workplace.
Right.
And the stories revolved around her work friends. And then, so that was a different kind of family,
right.
The work family.
So we're widening horizons a little bit here. And then we've got a little something different with Courtship of Eddie's Fathers. And I think you'll see this clip highlights the importance, and this is the early 70s, late 60s, of a mom. And if you remember that show, it was a movie originally,
right?
With, by the way, Ron Howard was the child in that movie. And he